Is it safe?
We have to move it now.
An HOA Karen decides to start a war. When her cat attacked your dog, she didn't just call animal control. No, she did something far worse. She burned down your farm, destroyed everything you worked for, and took your livestock from you. But this isn't just about the loss. This is about revenge. What happens when you stand up to an HOA Karen who goes too far? Before the storm of chaos and destruction hit, life on my farm was peaceful. It was the kind of life many people dream about. A quiet existence, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The days began with the soft sounds of roosters crowing in the distance, the faint smell of fresh hay in the morning air, and the warmth of the rising sun as it bathed the land in golden hues. The farm was more than just a piece of property. It was my sanctuary, the place where I felt truly at home. I had spent years carefully cultivating this piece of land, each plot of soil a testament to my hard work and dedication. I raised cows, chickens, and sheep, watching them grow from tiny, timid creatures into strong, independent animals. The sense of pride I felt seeing the animals thriving under my care was immeasurable. Every time I saw my chickens roaming freely, or my cows grazing peacefully in the fields, I knew I had created something special. It wasn't just a farm. It was my dream realized, a symbol of everything I had worked for. The farm wasn't just about the animals, though. It was a home. I lived there with my family, surrounded by the love and support we gave each other. My kids spent their afternoons running through the fields, their laughter echoing across the land, while my partner and I worked side by side to maintain the farm's operations. We didn't have much in terms of wealth, but we had everything that mattered. The joy of simple living, the connection to nature, and the comfort of being together. The house itself, though modest, was filled with warmth and character. It had an old-fashioned charm, with a red brick exterior that reminded me of the homes my grandparents used to live in. The porch, where I spent countless evenings watching the sunset, was always bustling with activity. The kids playing on the swing set, the dog chasing after a ball, and the occasional visit from neighbors who stopped by for a chat. There was always something happening, but it was never overwhelming. It was a life of simplicity and peace. One of the highlights of our farm was the animals. They weren't just livestock to us. They were family. The dogs, especially, had a special place in our hearts. We had a large, gentle Labrador named Max who roamed the farm freely. He was the protector of the animals, always alert, making sure no predator got too close. Max had a deep connection to the farm, and he was always there, a loyal companion and guardian. As I stood in the middle of the farm, watching the sun set over the horizon, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. There was no place I'd rather be. This farm represented everything I had worked for. The fruits of my labor, my passion for animals, and my love for my family. It was a perfect, tranquil existence, and nothing, I thought, could ever take that away. But, as fate would have it, I was wrong. The peaceful life I had come to cherish so deeply was about to be shattered in a way I never could have imagined. It all began with something so simple, a seemingly insignificant event that I never thought would spiral into such chaos. One afternoon, while I was tending to the garden, I heard a commotion near the edge of the farm. Max, a large Labrador, was barking loudly, a sound that usually signified either a squirrel or some other small creature. But this time, the urgency in his bark was different. It was sharp, frantic, and there was a tone in it that made me stop what I was doing and pay attention. Rushing toward the noise, I saw Max standing over by the fence, his body tense, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. At first, I couldn't see what it was, but then I noticed the small, fluffy cat darting around the yard. It was Karen's cat, the one she had let roam freely through the neighborhood for months. Max had always been curious about it, and I had seen them interact before. A few growls, a hiss here and there, but nothing more than the occasional tension between the two. However, this time, things were different. The cat had gone too far. As Max got closer, the cat, possibly startled or defensive, lashed out. Before I could react, I saw Max yelp in pain. It all happened so fast. A flash of claws, the sound of a struggle, And then Max backed off, limping slightly. My heart sank. The cat had attacked Max, scratching him fiercely. And now my dog, my loyal companion, was hurt. I immediately rushed to Max's side, checking for any serious wounds. Thankfully, the scratches weren't too deep, but he was visibly shaken. I comforted him as best as I could, muttering calming words while inspecting his injuries. They weren't too life-threatening, but seeing him in pain was enough to make my stomach churn. I knew I needed to address the situation, especially because Karen's cat had caused the problem. I wasn't one to cause drama or escalate things unnecessarily, so I decided to take a calm approach. I walked over to Karen's house, planning to speak with her politely, to let her know about the incident, and to ask if she could keep her cat on a leash or inside to prevent any future encounters. After all, the farm was a peaceful place, and the last thing I wanted was an ongoing conflict. When I arrived at her door, I was met with a cold reception. Karen, who had always been a bit standoffish, didn't even let me finish explaining the situation before she started berating me. She accused me of allowing Max to attack her cat, despite the fact that I had seen the cat charge at Max first. She was angry and defensive, making it clear that she wasn't willing to accept any responsibility for her cat's actions. It was as if she believed that her pet was entitled to roam wherever it pleased, with no regard for anyone else. At that moment, I realized this wasn't going to be a simple, neighborly conversation. I had tried to approach her with understanding, but instead, I was met with a confrontation. The tension between us grew as she refused to acknowledge the incident, and her temper flared. It was clear to me then that this would not be resolved quietly, and I began to fear that the situation could escalate even further. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of something much larger than a simple disagreement between neighbors. The worst was yet to come. What happened next felt like a snowball gaining momentum, growing bigger and more uncontrollable with each passing day. After the confrontation with Karen, I thought things would eventually settle down. I figured she'd calm down, realize the situation wasn't as dire as she thought, and we'd go back to being neighbors, with some minor adjustments made to prevent any further incidents. But I was wrong. Karen wasn't the type to let things go easily, especially not when it came to her precious cat. I soon found out that Karen had connections within the HOA, and she wasn't going to let this attack slide. She began spreading her version of the story, one in which Max had viciously attacked her cat without provocation. Soon, the HOA was involved, and what had started as a simple pet-related conflict turned into a full-blown HOA-led campaign against me. At first, I received a formal letter from the HOA, accusing me of allowing my dog to become a danger to the community. The letter mentioned a list of complaints from Karen and others in the neighborhood, some of which were exaggerated, others entirely fabricated. The accusations were shocking, and the tone was anything but friendly. I tried to stay calm, figuring this was just part of the HOA's process. I submitted my response, explaining the events as they had actually unfolded, hoping that reason would prevail. But things didn't improve. Karen, empowered by her position in the HOA, continued to escalate the situation. I found myself being bombarded with constant complaints about Max's behavior. She'd call the HOA, claiming Max was running loose again, even though he had always been confined to our property. Neighbors started getting involved, some siding with Karen and others avoiding the conflict altogether. It was clear that Karen had a lot of influence, and she was using that influence to turn the community against me. The worst part was how Karen used the HOA to target not just me, but my entire family. She went out of her way to make our lives difficult, from filing nuisance complaints about our animals to questioning every little thing about how we ran our farm. It felt like she was scrutinizing every aspect of our life. She'd even show up at our gate, making rude comments about our property, our animals, and our way of life. What had started as a simple misunderstanding had become a full-on battle, with Karen and her allies in the HOA attacking my reputation, my home, and my livelihood. I tried to maintain a low profile, hoping the HOA would eventually see through Karen's lies and manipulation. But the pressure mounted. It was no longer just about a cat and a dog. It was about a woman wielding her power to destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. And then, one day, after weeks of escalating tensions, the situation took a shocking turn. Karen went too far. I didn't know it at the time, but she was planning something far worse than just complaints and threats. As I tried to handle the HOA's interference and continue managing my farm, I had no idea that Karen was about to do something that would change everything. The peace I once knew was slipping away, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The morning everything changed started like any other, with the sun creeping over the horizon, casting soft golden hues over the farm. I was up early, tending to the animals, checking on the crops, and making sure everything was in order. Max was with me, as always, trotting along beside me while I worked. The air was still, and the only sounds were the quiet rustle of leaves and the occasional bird call. It was a peaceful moment, one of those rare, quiet times that made all the hard work worthwhile. But that peace didn't last long. Around mid-morning, I heard a distant sound, an engine. It was faint at first, barely audible, but it grew louder with each passing second until I could clearly hear the rumbling of a vehicle speeding down the dirt road that led to our farm. I turned to look, feeling a sudden sense of unease. The car was unfamiliar, a dark-colored SUV that wasn't one of the usual neighbors. As it pulled up near the gates of my property, I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. My heart began to race, the sense of foreboding growing stronger by the second. Before I could even make sense of what was happening, the driver of the SUV jumped out, Karen. She was standing in front of me, her face twisted in a mix of anger and satisfaction. I didn't understand it at first, but her eyes were cold, and her body language was aggressive. There was something about her that sent a chill through me. She didn't say a word at first, just stood there glaring at me. But then, it happened. Out of nowhere, I saw a plume of smoke rise from the distance. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light or something from the nearby woods. But the smoke grew thicker and darker. It wasn't long before I realized that the source of the smoke was my farm, the barn. The heart of everything I had worked for was on fire. Panic set in. My stomach dropped, and my mind raced. I sprinted toward the barn, Max following closely behind, barking in distress. As I got closer, the heat hit me, and I could feel the flames licking the sky. I could hear the crackling of wood burning, the loud hissing of the fire consuming everything in its path. It was too late to save anything. The fire was spreading too quickly, engulfing the entire structure. I froze for a moment, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. This was my livelihood, everything I had worked for, and it was being reduced to ashes right in front of me. The animals that had been housed in the barn were trapped, unable to escape the inferno. I felt a rush of helplessness wash over me. The thought of losing my animals, my home, my years of labor, it was unbearable. I looked back at Karen, who stood there with a smug expression on her face. She didn't look concerned at all. In fact, it was almost as if she was enjoying the destruction. It didn't take long for the fire to spread to the nearby fields, consuming everything in its path. I could hear the screams of the animals trapped inside, the sound of my entire world crumbling before me. It wasn't just a fire. It was an act of vengeance. Karen had done this. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. My farm, my home, my animals, everything was gone in an instant, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The fire department arrived too late, their efforts a mere attempt at containing the damage. But the destruction was already done. My farm, once a symbol of peace and hard work, was now nothing more than a smoldering ruin. I stood there, watching it burn, feeling the weight of the loss sink in. This wasn't just a fire, it was the loss of everything I had built. All because of Karen's relentless vendetta. After the fire, I felt like I was walking through a fog, unable to process the enormity of what had happened. My farm was gone, reduced to nothing more than ash and rubble. The animals I had spent years raising, the crops I had carefully nurtured, everything was lost in an instant. The anger inside me simmered, growing with each passing minute as I realized what Karen had done. I knew this wasn't the end of the story. There was no way I could let her get away with this. Not after everything she had taken from me. The first thing I did was make sure my family was safe. My kids were shaken, of course, But they were strong, and my partner was there to support me, just as they always had been. We didn't have much left, but we had each other, and that gave me the strength to keep going. The emotional toll was unbearable, but I wasn't going to let Karen win. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything without a fight. I knew the law was on my side, but the legal process wasn't going to move fast enough. Karen had done something irreversible, and I needed justice now, not in months or years. I started gathering evidence, documenting everything I could, photos of the aftermath, the fire department reports, and any possible witnesses who could confirm that the fire was no accident. I reached out to a lawyer, determined to take her to court. But as I delved deeper into the process, I realized something. The HOA was involved in this too. The people who should have been supporting me were instead turning a blind eye, siding with Karen, or ignoring the situation entirely. That's when I realized that if I wanted justice, I would have to take matters into my own hands. The legal route might be slow, but I could make sure that Karen felt the consequences of her actions in a more immediate, personal way. I began to gather information on Karen, her background, and her connections within the HOA. I learned everything I could about her history, her relationships, and the people who had been enabling her. It became clear that Karen had built her little empire by manipulating others, using her power to get whatever she wanted without regard for anyone else. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. With the evidence I gathered, I started reaching out to other neighbors who had been affected by her actions in the past. It wasn't just me she had targeted. There were others who had felt her wrath too. Together, we started forming a plan. It wasn't just about getting Karen out of my life, it was about exposing her for the bully she was, making sure she couldn't hurt anyone else the way she had hurt me. I pushed forward, working behind the scenes to expose her, leveraging my connections and using the power of the community to bring the truth to light. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but each small victory felt like a step closer to taking back control of my life. It was a fight that consumed me, but it was one I was willing to face. In the end, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about standing up for what was right. I had lost my farm, but I wasn't going to let Karen steal my dignity too. The day I finally saw Karen's power unravel when her manipulations were exposed, and she lost her grip on the HOA, felt like the first breath of fresh air after a long period of suffocation. I wasn't the same person I had been before the fire. The pain and loss were still there, but I had reclaimed my strength. I had fought back, not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been pushed around by people like Karen. The fire had taken everything, but it also ignited something in me, a determination to stand tall, no matter the cost. If you're enjoying this story and want to see more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more updates, twists, and personal stories. There's so much more to come. Thanks for being part of this journey.